Okay, so I'm not Thorberg. I lead an organization which is called Green by Iceland, which is in short a collaboration platform between the private and the public when it comes to climate issues and green solutions. So we have a broad range of partners with us, and two of our partners here, which have presentations today on power and HS Orka. But I'm just going to give a brief overview of where we are at Iceland at a very high level, and then I'll give the word to my colleagues here from Iceland. And just to begin with, well, you are probably all familiar that we are an island here in the North Atlantic. We're kind of like midway between North America and Europe, and that's quite an advantage. You can look at it from that perspective. And we're not a very big nation. We have 373,000 inhabitants. We've been a republic since 1944. But actually, we have a really interesting history when it comes to our story and renewable energy, because we have been harnessing renewable energy for over a century. And if we go back just 100 years, well, it's really interesting aspect, because at that point of time, Iceland was among the poorest countries in Europe in those days. And we were, of course, pretty isolated. We, at the same time as other nations, Iceland was urbanizing, so we needed to find new alternative means when it came to the energy and the energy alternatives. And maybe in a sense, the situation which Iceland experienced in those days, in the beginning of the 20th century, was a bit similar to, you could see, the crisis that we see in Europe today with the energy, access to energy and energy security. So this meant that we started looking into other alternatives, and you could say that the first energy transition started in the Reykjavik area at the beginning of the 20th century. And what I like the most about that story is that it started really small, but it was just a few entrepreneurs which started experimenting, bringing warm water from hot springs, and then eventually that took off and led to larger projects. And the town of Reykjavik was actually the first large-scale project in the world when it comes to central heating. So we have an extraordinary story to share. And if we jump back to today, well, we as a nation, even if our footprint in the larger context, in the global context, might not be big when it comes to carbon emissions, well, we have set very ambitious goals, however. And we aim to become carbon neutral by 2040. This has been passed by the legislation in the parliament with a vast majority supporting this. And we also have another really high ambition where the government has aims to become, work towards becoming one of the first nations to eliminate fossil fuels entirely. So, of course, you might be wondering where we are at right now, but the fact is that we actually 100% of the electricity and house needs met are actually met with renewable energy produced within Iceland. And here you can see the proportion of house heating and how it splits from geothermal power, which makes up 90% of the house heating in Iceland today, and electricity 10%. And from electricity production, you can see that the split is then higher on the hydro power and geothermal 30%. So all in all, you could say that we have been harnessing mostly hydro power and geothermal power in the past 100 years. But we as other nations we are looking now for other alternatives, and wind will come into play. But just to show you a little bit the journey from the beginning when we started implementing at scale in the town of Reykjavik in the 1930s, you can see here in the 1940s how high of a proportion oil actually had in our portfolio. The blue, the light blue color here, and the dark blue color here being coal. And we worked really proactively throughout the decades to ensure that we were able to implement geothermal power and central heating across the municipalities in Iceland. And what's really interesting about that is that even though Iceland is a volcanic island and we have high temperature areas, of course, being a volcanic island, we also have low temperature areas. So we have accumulated a lot of experience when it comes to low temperature areas as well. And many of these do exist also in the continent in Europe. So just to give you a view, you know, this is a bit like what Iceland or Reykjavik looked like in the old days. But this is how Iceland looks today, and we have clear skies, very little pollution, and in a sense, our energy, the renewable energy, and the fact that we've come quite far is actually laying the very foundation of our modern society today and our prosperity. But geothermal has also brought, you could say, a higher quality of life. And we have, of course, the clean air and the drinking water, but we've also figured out new ways of applying this fantastic resource in many different ways. And that's what On Power and HS Orka will give you a little bit insights into. And that's really fascinating to think that it can actually be about harnessing the value and creating value out of maybe something that you know, one company or a community might consider a waste can become value of another. So you'll see fantastic examples of this in the presentations now coming. But all in all, because we have a unique path, well, we have developed substantial expertise and knowledge. Of course, there are investment opportunities within Iceland, but we are also eager to share the knowledge and expertise that has been accumulated in Iceland throughout our decades of experience going through these different projects. So, and that goes for geothermal energy, for hydropower, and power transmission systems. I think very few countries in the world can actually say that they have 100% renewable energy grid as Iceland has. The new industry when it comes to carbon capture, utilization and storage, we have been actually at the forefront of developing that in the past 15 years. So really exciting. So as a result, we've participated in a lot of projects all across the world. You can see, especially here, the red dots relating to geothermal projects, green ones, transmission systems, and then the blue ones representing where we have participated and supported hydropower projects. So we are here to share our knowledge and work with other partners. And I'm just gonna finish here with a brief video before I give it to my partners here. So I'm passing it on to Margaret and Helga Kristín on power. Over to you.
Thank you. No, I have shared my screen now. Can you please confirm that you see it?
Don't see it.
You don't see it? Okay, let's.
Yeah, now it works.
Now it works. Beautiful.
Yeah, perfect.
Super. Okay. So we at On Power wanted to tell you about how we are powering innovation and enabling the transition to a greener society. My name is Margaret Lilia, and I will tell you about the general operations of On, and then Helga Kristín will take over and tell you about our geothermal park. On Power is part of the Reykjavik Energy Group, which dates back to 1909 and serves over 75% of all Icelanders. The daughter companies of Reykjavik Energy provide essential services in Iceland, with On Power producing and selling electricity everywhere in Iceland, and hot water used for the district heating in the capital area. Carbfix, providing a permanent storage solution by turning CO2 into stone underground. Veitur, which is the biggest utility company in Iceland, running the electricity system and distributing hot and cold water and running the sewage system as well. And then Reykjavik Fiber Network, which is a telecommunications company running a fiber optic network of high quality. On Power then itself is then Iceland's largest geothermal company and Iceland's second largest power producer. It was established in 2014, runs 3 power plants, produces 431 megawatts of electricity, and as well 760 megawatts of thermal energy, which, as not previously described, is used in the district heating in the Reykjavik area. And this use of hot water for heating is actually such a strength for the Icelandic economy, because we are then relatively untouched by price fluctuations in gas. On is then also the sole producer of hydrogen in Iceland, and we plan to become carbon neutral by 2030, an ambitious goal. To tell you about our power plants, we run Hellisheiðarvirkjun, which was established in 2006 and is one of the largest geothermal power plants in the world. It produces 303 megawatts of electricity with 7 turbines, 210 megawatts of thermal energy, with the hot water running at 950 liters per second, which is quite a lot. Then we also have Nesjavallavirkjun. It was established in 1990 and is one of the world's oldest geothermal power plants. It produces 120 megawatts of electricity with 4 turbines and 350 megawatts of thermal energy, with the water running at 1,550 liters per second. Then thirdly, we have Andakílsárvirkjun, our hydropower plant, which produces 8 megawatts of electricity. But how do we make sure that the natural resources that On is trusted with are used in the most beneficial way? On's objective is a sustainable use of natural resources, and we do so by, among others, conducting extensive research on our resources by highly skilled scientists and with an ambitious environmental policy. It is safe to say that On has been a leader in the energy transition shift in Iceland, with its initiatives to enable the shift to a battery electric vehicle fleet, and also by being the sole producer of hydrogen in Iceland. We sell electricity to households and companies and corporates of a wide range anywhere in Iceland, and by this contribute proudly to strong economic activity in Iceland. On Power is also a strong supporter of innovation, and it was with ambition to become carbon neutral that On Power, in cooperation with Carbfix, invented the Carbfix method of turning CO2 into stone underground. Helga will now take over and tell you about our initiative with innovation at our geothermal park. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. As Margaret mentioned, it is clear both in our values and company culture that we at OnPower want to create value through responsible use of resources. And this is the driver behind the development of the geothermal park. We saw opportunities for improving the utilization of the resources in the area around Hellisheiði, and for businesses collaborating in value creation while benefiting both the environment and society. So if you go to the next slide, Margaret. Yeah, thanks. Here you can see an overview. Here you can see an overview of the location. You can see Hengill mountain in the back, an old volcano, and Hellisheiði power plant in front of it with all the steam. And the plots you see around the road are part of 103 hectares of planned land where we have started developing the geothermal park. In the geothermal park, we envision an innovative community of diverse, progressive partners optimizing the use of resources in a circular economy. A powerful hub for green energy-related innovation, and all operations in harmony with the environment. The resources available in the geothermal park are electricity, cold water, hot water, separator water or geothermal water, carbon dioxide, and access to the Carbfix technology. Our partners within Reykjavik Energy, firstly, OnPower's hydrogen production plant, which is a good example of how we're better utilizing energy, as the hydrogen is produced during night when demand for electricity from households is lower. On has operated an innovation hub within the geothermal park, where scientists and startups get access to resources and a place to conduct research. All the current customers within the geothermal park started within the innovation hub. 2 of these customers are currently going through their second expansion within the park. So we offer opportunity for growth. We consider the On Geothermal exhibition a part of the geothermal park. It is an exhibition of how geothermal energy is produced. It's located in Hellisheiði power plant and has over 100,000 visitors yearly. It is a great exhibition, and if you're ever in Iceland, we highly recommend visiting it. We are also partnering with both Veitur and Carbfix. Here we have the current customers in the geothermal park: Climeworks, Vaxa, and Geosilica. Climeworks works in direct air capture. It removes excess CO2 from the air and operates a carbon removal service in cooperation with Carbfix. Vaxa produces microalgae rich in omega-3 and protein, which is used in nutritional supplements for human and fish. And Geosilica harvests silica from separator water, which is then used in nutritional supplements. We have ambitious plans for the geothermal park, and a wide range of customers could fit into the model we are developing. Here you can see an example of industries we have put down as possible clients, all with the possibilities to fit into our circular economy. So we put down e-fuels, agri and aquaculture, data centers, capture, utilization and disposal of CO2, algae cultivation, and tourism. And a good example of how we are building a circular economy is cascading use of water. Our current customer, Climeworks, is using separator water from the power plant in its operations. After use, it is pumped back to the power plant where it's used, again, producing hot water for district heating. This geothermal water could then possibly be used for bathing in a lagoon before being pumped back into the ground. And if we look at the data centers, they use cold water for cooling, and this water could afterwards be used as a preheated water for other operations. And back to our title, Powering Innovation and Enabling the Transition to a Greener Society. How is On Power pursuing this? We are, for example, doing this through leading the energy transition in transport by building infrastructure of electric charging stations. We do this in our general business development through our choice of customers, and we do this with the development of the geothermal park. If you have any questions or even projects or collaborations that fit our profile, please be in touch. This is the team. It's me, Margrét Lilja, and Stefán Fannar as well. Thank you.
And then we hand over to Jóhann Snorri.
Yes, and I will share the screen as well. Can you see the screen now? I think it's loading.
I think it's okay? Loading, yes. Yeah, probably there. I have an assistant that's doing this for me. Thank you, Nótt. I had some technical difficulties. So my name is Jóhann Snorri Sigurbergsson. I'm a business development manager for HS Orka. HS Orka is a company founded in 1974. So we've been here for almost now half a century. This is maybe not needed at the moment. Nótt went pretty thoroughly through Iceland. I mean, of course, HS Orka, ON Power, all of the other geothermal companies in Iceland are operating due to our unique position in the planet, where we have these tectonic plates that actually come ashore and run across the whole of the country, giving us access to this great resource that is the high heat geothermal resource. But HS Orka, we are the largest privately owned power producer in Iceland, mainly founded for the key purpose of harnessing or utilizing the geothermal resource for space heating or direct use for heating up our houses. So some 50, 60 years ago, we went through an earlier energy transition. Now we're talking about an energy transition in the transportation sector, but we moved from oil heated houses into utilizing the geothermal resource for our house heating. Amazingly, a very controversial decision at the time, even though today it's something that makes complete sense for Iceland. We have two shareholders. 50% is owned by a company called Jarðvarmi, which is a conglomerate of 14 Icelandic pension funds, and 50% is owned by a European infrastructure investment fund called Ankala Partners, that is mostly a vehicle for UK pension funds. So two very strong owners with a long-term vision for a steady growth and a steady operation. Our installed capacity is 250 megawatts of electrical production, and we have around 200 megawatts in thermal capacity as well. We supply all of the Reykjanes Peninsula, which is, you see on the bottom left-hand side of the country, with hot water and fresh water as well. And we have almost a 45-year history of utilizing multiple streams from our geothermal resource. So yeah, with the utilization of the multiple streams around our 3 power plants, 2 of them located at the Reykjanes Peninsula and 1 of them in the south of Iceland, actually on the golden circle. Around these companies, a cluster of various operations have built up around us. All of them have kind of grown with us from being startups into being large companies on an Icelandic scale. Maybe switch the slides now. Did you go one too far, Note? Did you miss one? Yeah, so just a quick overview of our 3 power plants. So our Svartsengi power plant is our initial operation, one of the first combined heat and power plants in Iceland and probably in the world. So we produce electricity and hot water there. Quite complex operation built up in 6 phases, the last one being commissioned in 2008. Then we have our Reykjanes geothermal power plant, installed capacity of 130 megawatts. We just finished increasing the production capacity from 100 megawatts to 130, and we added the additional 30 megawatts just by reutilizing the fluids that we have already used for generating the first 100 megawatts. Then we have a small, very beautiful hydro plant in the south of Iceland I told you about before, Brú, which has an installed capacity of 9.9 megawatts. Please, the next one. So our resource park is actually a very interesting concept that we've been operating for probably around 40 years. It has grown organically around our 2 power plants under a very sturdy guidance of one of our recently retired employees called Albert Albertsson, who started thinking about the multiple use of our resource streams and how we can responsibly and sustainably build up some uses for our effluent streams. And the mantra is quite simple. If we have an effluent stream or a waste stream, it just means that we haven't figured out what to do with it yet. So from that, around our power plants, 10 different companies have built up, probably the most famous one being the Blue Lagoon. The Blue Lagoon fluid, you can see a picture of the Blue Lagoon there on the upper left side of the pictures. Beautiful blue water, but this water is actually the same water that we have used to produce our electricity and hot water. So in essence, the Blue Lagoon is a waste stream from our power plant operations. And thinking about the Blue Lagoon in 2019, I use that year because it's before COVID and it's a tourist attraction. The Blue Lagoon actually had revenues that were 50% higher than the revenues of the whole of HS Orka. And being able to build a business, a very viable business that actually gets much higher revenues than the company it's getting the waste from is actually an amazing achievement. But we also have in our resource park an e-methanol plant that started in 2012, capacity of 4,000 tons, which at least the last I knew was the largest green methanol plant in the world. We have 2 fish farms, one of them growing Arctic char and other is growing a tropical fish called Senegal sole. Both of them use resources from our power plants. The Arctic char fish farm is using heat from one of our discharge pipes to heat the seawater for the fish farming. And the Senegal sole one is actually using direct use of our cooling water from Reykjanes. The cooling water in Reykjanes is actually lava filtered seawater. So we have a resource stream there that is a 35 degrees completely pure seawater with no life or no dirt in it. In the Blue Lagoon, we have algae farming, we have Orf Genetics, a fantastic greenhouse growing cosmetics and stem cell research next to us, and 2 fish drying facilities in our Reykjanes area that are taking fish heads, drying them up with excess heat from our power plants, and creating a delicatessen that is sent mostly to Nigeria. And the next one, please. The companies are from different types of sectors. Tourism, of course, being a big part. We are located right next to Keflavik Airport, so a fantastic location. We have the Blue Lagoon, we have hotels. Of course, the Blue Lagoon is a hotel and a spa and everything like that. We are in the food and cosmetics and biotech with Orgenetics, Blue Lagoon, and the fish drying facilities. An e-fuel plant, carbon recycling, and the aquaculture. That is a rapidly growing sector in Iceland. And I think in the coming years, there is work started on a new fish farm in our resource park. There's going to be a 40,000 ton salmon farming, land-based salmon farming that will start their operation in probably 1 or 2 year time. So next one, please. The value proposition is quite simple, a one-stop shop for renewable energy and sustainable resources and land. The best part about the resource park and the resource park way of thinking is that there is such fantastic opportunities to create a win-win situation where companies can get valuable resources for a relatively good value from a company like HS Orka, where this is an affluent stream. We have a great location, so located within 25 kilometers from the international airports and deep sea ports, with great logistics both to mainland Europe and North America. The key focus, and this is true for probably all of Iceland, one of the key great things about us, especially in the as we see the situation in the energy markets in Europe, we offer long-term PPAs with 10 to 20 year contract with this long-term price visibility. So you can basically, we can tell you how much you have to pay us for the electricity in 20 years time. It's quite unique. We have already around 50 hectares of plots, so zoned and planned in the vicinity of our power plants. And this great opportunity to use waste to create value, because this is very simple, and part of our introduction to HS Orka is that there is no such thing as waste. If we use something as waste, we just have to rethink what we see in front of us. And the next slide, please. So the future of the resource park, I mean, currently we are looking at a multi-purpose use of our resources. If you hit the button once, but in the future we are looking for a more circular usage. So where we can see our effluent streams being used by a company and its effluent streams being used by another company, and so on until we can fully utilize what we have. And if you go into the next slide, here you can see a few different sectors. So I mean, food supplements, etc. These type of companies, vertical farming, algae farming, biotech, can use a whole variety of our streams, CO2 being highly important, but for the e-fuels as well, hydrogen, methanol, methane, all of these productions, these e-fuels, they need electricity, they need water to produce green hydrogen. But if you add the CO2 and the CO2 emission from our 2 geothermal plants is very, very clean CO2 with very low levels of H2S. If you generate hydrogen, one of the effluent streams from hydrogen is oxygen. And if you think about aquaculture, one of the key ingredients when you have an aquaculture farm is oxygen. So from our e-fuel plants, they could supply our aquaculture plants or the aquaculture companies in our park with oxygen. When you're growing fish, especially in a large scale, you're going to have some waste, and the waste from a fish can be used to produce, let's say, fertilizers. So great opportunities going forward to think about to think about more multi-purpose use and a circular way of thinking. Just click maybe once more. So here we have the plots of land around our Reykjanes power plant. I think there are a few pop-ups, not if you just push the buttons a few more times. So you can see the Reykjanes power plant there. It's measured. On the left-hand side, you see the fish drying facilities that are utilizing our excess heat. The Stolt Sea Farm, the Senegal Sole tropical fish farming, is right below our power plant. The large-scale salmon fish farm is going to be located on the right-hand side next to the ocean. And then we have strategically thought about how we will actually set up the different companies that potentially can go into the resource park. And I mean, this is not just a pipe dream. We are in discussion with companies from all of these sectors, and we realize that it will be important how we will set them up. So we don't want to have an e-fuel plant too far away from the fish farms or from our power plant, because they will use the CO2 and hopefully deliver oxygen. We don't want to have the fertilizer farm too far away from the fish farm either. So we are trying to think this in a deeper manner, how we will set this up. So this was the very quick overview of HS Orka and our resource park. My contact details are there, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this overview. So let's switch to the discussion part. There's already a question in the chat from my colleague Anne. Does Iceland rely on additional energy imports, or is it self-sufficient?
Yeah.
I mean, I can take that one. We are,
Yep.
you could say, you know, if you think about the primary energy use in Iceland, you know, all the electricity, house heating is self-sufficient, but we are still importing fossil fuels for the transportation, mobility, you know, land, sea, and air.
Okay. And how is the perspective to change or maybe to reduce this kind of importation?
We are working really hard on closing the gap. And as I mentioned, we have the ambition to become carbon neutral by 2040. And by that time, we will have to have figured out alternative solutions to replace fossil fuels with renewable energy. So that's it. All the sectors are working hard on that currently.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And you mentioned different opportunities that one can use in a geothermal park. For example, if there are partners who are interested in exploring those opportunities, how would the process start? How would you proceed? So it's maybe a question for HS Orka and On Power.
Yep, I can start quickly. I mean, if it all starts with a dialogue. I mean, we have a criteria for companies that can actually build up in our resource park. Like I said, it's not only our key focus in proactively seeking new partners is of course kind of focused on these sectors that I mentioned before, but we are open for everything, and if we are contacted, and we just try to figure out what kind of resources we have and how can they fit the partner's need. The interest in Iceland and interest in HS Orka, and I've heard this just through the media for other power companies, is vast at the moment. It's never been the same. So there are definitely a lot of opportunities to grow these resource park thinking and create a win-win situation for both the power plant and the potential partners.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say the same for our part at On Power. It starts with a conversation. We have a due diligence that we usually start with and take it on to the resources needed. And if the company fits our profile, we can look at how it fits into the circular economy as well. So there's a few things that we look into. We also have strict requirements regarding the environment. We want everything to be in harmony with the environment as well.
Perfect, thank you. There's another question from Gaspard. He would like to know which quantity of hydrogen is produced per year in Iceland and for what purpose it is used.
Yeah, I can take that one. So the hydrogen station that we are currently running is it's a relatively small scale. It's more of a learning station, and we have used it. So there is a small hydrogen vehicle fleet in Iceland, and there have been the primary use so far. And also it has been a very good learning opportunity for parties that have wanted to structure more of a hydrogen infrastructure for hydrogen enabled trucks and so on. So there we have had very fruitful discussions on how it can actually be executed and the learning process in that. So both it has been the production, but then also we have been the primary partner to those, thinking about how we can actually construct hydrogen